Welcome to Shogun CRO Expert Series. My name is Maura. I'm the marketing director here at Shogun. And in this series, I interview experts on CRO and A/B testing. Talk to agency owners, other e-commerce merchants, anyone who's really driving more sales and money with CRO. I ask some questions that you probably want to know. In this episode, I talked to Tim Davidson. Tim runs a CRO agency for Shopify brands called Clean Commit. We talk about when to know if you're ready for CRO, what the traffic you should be getting for an A/B test, like how much traffic you need for a good A/B test. We dive into AI tools and how to use some AI tools and what you should know about them before you start experimenting with AI and CRO. And we also touch on some advanced topics like AA testing, which is something that if you've been running a couple A/B tests for a while, you should actually try AA testing. It is a great conversation, whether you are a beginner to CRO or you've been running a program for months, you're going to learn something new. And I hope you enjoy it. Today, I'm joined by Tim Davidson. He is the co-founder and director at Clean Commit. They are a CRO agency that helps Shopify merchants grow without the guesswork. He also has an amazing LinkedIn presence that I've been following. He does a ton of deep dives, lots of good tips on A/B testing and experimentation. So that's how I roped him into this. So I'm very excited, Tim, to have you to learn from you over the next half an hour or so. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to be here.
So before we get started, can you just introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about Clean Commit and what you all do.
Sure. I mean, that was actually a pretty good overview. But we're a team of six, seven, and we're focused entirely on helping Shopify companies optimize their store. So what we find is there comes a point where most stores they start from nothing, or they have a very humble beginning, and they grow quite quickly. They get to the point where just throwing more money at ads and trying to get more traffic doesn't really produce the results they're looking for. That's usually the threshold where we come in, and you need some development help, you need some design help. You kind of need someone to focus on finding the ways that your store can be better. Because if you can tune those things up, it makes big multipliers to your return on ad spend, which is, it's a big deal for any company that's spending $50,000 or more on paid ads. So that's where we come in, and we use data and analysis and development and a whole bunch of other techniques to find ways to change variables within a site, which ends up making more revenue for the business.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a like the ad roller coaster. I think that people get on is like they turn it on in the beginning, it starts bringing in a ton of money, and then you kind of hit a wall at some point. Um, and yeah, it's exactly kind of what you talked about, which kind of brings me to my next question is I don't know if you've noticed this, but one thing I've seen is a lot of brands like you just described. They're growing, they've got their marketing channels going, and they kind of know they should be A/B testing, like they know they should be optimizing. It's kind of in the back of their heads, but they're just not prioritizing it. So I kind of want to hear from you, like what your thoughts are, like what would you say to someone who's struggling to either see the value of CRO or like they just haven't gotten started yet because they're managing campaigns and they're getting their seasonal launches out and things like that. Like how can we convince people that it's actually really worth it at a certain point in time?
Yeah, so I think it's important to qualify yourself whether as a business whether you're ready for this part of your journey. Not every business should be doing CRO yet. It's kind of like a stage in maturity. So I think once you've got your traffic dialed and you're pretty happy with how things are going, even if you are running new promotional campaigns and you're like focused on product development and stuff, I think when you realize that just changing some of the setup in your store can yield such big benefits, it becomes a much more of a priority. So a good example of that is we're running a price test for a brand at the moment. And we've changed the price just a little bit. Like they're a low SKU, like they only have a few products, but we've reduced the price by I think it's 10 or 15%, and their revenue per visitor has gone up about 70%. So when you tell that to brands that aren't A/B testing, they're like, man, I'm spending so much time and effort into these activities, which just isn't driving a lot of like return on investment. I think when they realize that, it becomes much more of a priority, but you really need to have kind of like 30 to 40,000 sessions a month to kind of get to that point. Anyone below that should be focused on getting more traffic and refining what they are as a brand and their targeting and all of that stuff. Once you're past that step, that's when it comes into the spotlight, and it can really help you like get to that next stage of scaling.
Yeah. And that, I mean, you just answered my next question, which is like, how does the brand know they're ready? Because I think that's the traffic question is a big question that I see a lot of people ask. Is like, how do I know if I'm getting enough traffic? So can you tell me when again, like what's that number or like what's that sweet spot for you guys?
Yeah, so I think at a bare minimum, you need to have around 40 to 50,000 sessions a month. You can do it with fewer sessions than that. It just takes a really long time. So as a as an agency owner, I don't work with brands that have less traffic than that because we just can't generate the return on investment for them. But as a small brand, I think if you have less traffic than that, you can run a test. You just have to be prepared for it to take like 2 or 3 months. Which, then it kind of creeps into seasonal variants and stuff like that. So that
Mm.
it can be a little bit tricky. But once you're past that threshold, especially if you have 50,000 sessions a month upwards, then you can start running multiple tests. And that's like when the exciting stuff happens.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I running a test for 2 to 3 months, it just I can see the benefits of it, but also it's like you're already on to, like things just move so fast in
It's
e-commerce.
tricky because you might want to change stuff on the page or change your offer. And when you do that, you invalidate the test. So it's like it kind of doesn't work that well.
Yeah, yeah. Which actually brings me to another question that I had for you is what are some reasons that you see that like why what screws up A/B tests, like for lack of a better phrase? Like what like means why do they end up with inconclusive resort results? Like what are some common issues you see when people have run A/B tests without your agency or what have you learned in your experience?
Yeah, there's a ton. I think most of the time it's like not being bought into the process or not understanding that you're like back in grade school when you're in the science lab running an experiment and you can't just like start putting other stuff in the beaker as you're halfway through a test. Like you need to leave it, determine what your variables are and then leave it to do its thing. And depending on what mechanism you're testing with, it can take quite a while. So as a founder, if you're watching your page and like, oh, I'm still not happy with these results, that's usually when they start jumping in and changing their headlines and content and images and stuff. We've kind of made a bit of a workaround that we use GitHub and GitHub Actions to sync the variable, so the variant test. So if you're running an A/B test, you've got the control and the variant. We sync content changes between the control and the variant. So if because founders do this all the time, they go and change like an image on the hero for a new promotion or
Yeah,
something. We sync those across the two tests, which
got it.
kind of keeps everything balanced, but that's the main reason why things fall over.
Hmm. Yeah, it can be hard. I think e-commerce, like the changes that people make to their homepages or any of their pages, like it's just like a constant thing. I can see that really throwing off a test. So yeah, making sure that you're not adding an extra ingredient, so to speak, and more things into the beaker. I like that phrase. Cool. Okay. So one of the very helpful resources that I've snagged from you on LinkedIn that is on your website that we will link below is you have a 148-point CRO audit checklist. It's so detailed, it's so useful. And like I said, I will link it below, but I want to know from you, like for someone who hasn't really dig into that, what should someone look for when they first start auditing their site or when they decide they're ready to either work with an agency or try A/B testing on their own? Like, what are some things, like, how do they approach that first audit or first examination of their site to find something to A/B test?
Yeah, that's like a really long answer to give. But there's a ton of stuff. I think the thing is that usually what happens is a brand picks up a theme and the themes are often not super well optimized for conversion, or they might be optimized for like larger brands with tons and tons of products.
Mhm.
And there's a big, big difference between like an ASOS or a Nike and like someone who wants to spin up a Shopify store and get it going. Even if you've been working on it for a while, there's still kind of holes in the theme. So pretty much at every level of the theme, there's going to be something that could be tuned to make it easier for your customers to get through. But like the analogy I like using is the main parts that you want to focus on your site are anywhere that a visitor has to do something. So like your visitors are just traveling down the highway, and as they're cruising through your store, there's not a whole lot that can go wrong. But as soon as they hit a traffic light, like if they have to wait there too long or it's not clearly marked whether they can turn left or right, that's when they tend to bounce. So they're
Mhm.
the points on your store that you really need to focus on.
Yeah, that's another good analogy. You've got a lot of good analogies. I like it. It makes it
I thought a
easier
bit
for
about
those.
this. Thank you.
Yeah, you put some thought into it. And for those like me who are not CRO experts, it's very helpful to think of that. I like that, like the traffic highway. Um, there's all types of bumps, and I think, yeah, I think finding isolating those holes, it just takes a little bit of research, I think. Like just kind of diving into your data is so
It
key.
it does, and that's why that audit sheet is helpful because like we've spent a ton of time doing this, and I think I've done like upwards of 300 audits over the last few years. So I got to the point where I was like, I need to write some of this down. And that's where that sheet was born. It's not like conclusive. Like there's things that pull outside of it, but as a starting point, it's a really good list to just go through and tick off and make sure you kind of like mostly tick most of the boxes.
Yes, yes, it's super helpful. Like I said, I will make sure it's linked below. If you're getting this in an email, it'll be linked in the email as well because it's a really good. It's not even a more. It's more than a starting point. It's like part like the half the race. I think you can cover in that. Um, all right. Well, outside of that CRO checklist, so one of the things I've seen you talk about is kind of starting to experiment with AI and using that to like find optimization opportunities. And I think this is really interesting because AI is really changing so much for e-commerce brands, how they use it on their site, but also like how they use it to do their research.
Mm.
So I kind of would love to hear from you just a little bit of like what you think about using AI to either look for optimization opportunities or for CR research, things like that. Like if you use it yourself, just kind of know your take is on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's definitely the way of the future, and it saves
Yeah.
tons of time, especially if you aren't sure where the problems are on your website. So I think the biggest potential for anyone who doesn't spend every day looking at Google Analytics or like Snowplow Analytics or whichever analytics you've got running on your store, if you know that your conversion rate is probably a little bit low and you're looking for potential spots that it might be falling over, connecting whichever analytics platform you're using to AI is a really quick way to just ask it in human terms, like where the problems are. So
Mhm.
there's a little bit of a framework to it, and I've got like a couple of resources that I share every so often around this. For Shopify, I think it's probably the easiest way to go for merchants on Shopify is to use Sidekick. So Sidekick is the native AI agent that Shopify has built in. It's not perfect because there's some data that Shopify doesn't expose to it, like which devices a customer enters on, which can be like really important. But if you ask it the right questions, if you ask it like, "Hey, Sidekick, it looks like my mobile traffic is kind of not doing so well. Can you help me go through and identify if there's any particular products or like any pages that are having issues?" Then it can at least point you in the right direction, and then you can get onto the other tools like heat maps and session recordings. I think the main thing that people have problems with when they're trying to figure out where those issues are is like knowing that there's a whole bunch of tools out there, but not knowing where to look. So that's kind of the answer that AI gives you. It's like, here's a really, really like good clue as to where things are at. It often gets it wrong though, so you do need to go and check with different sources. But as
Yeah.
a starting place, and there's like heaps of tools out there now, like I could talk forever about how to use Claude and Claude Code and all the other like MCP integrations to get different AI sources reading across different platforms. But there's like, yeah, there's so much to it. And especially if you're doing A/B testing, because then you can
Mhm.
go and get your AI agent looking at all of your data and then also get it looking at your tests and kind of draw conclusions that span across both data sets, which as a human is like painful and time consuming to do. So just plugging that stuff in is like it's a massive time saver.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you pointed out that sometimes it's wrong because that is important to know with AI is that sometimes it's wrong. But it's so helpful. And what's crazy and cool is that like I feel like we're at the start of this. Like there's already been so much, but I just think we're like kind of at the tip of the iceberg with like the types of AI tools. And I think learning how to use them now will just help anybody as they're trying to grow. Uh it's really unbelievable. It's
Yeah,
watching it
it's
all
pretty good.
happen is
I'll be
crazy.
out of a
Yeah.
job soon. Yeah, it's gonna be.
Honestly, I mean, we all will. So we'll all just be there
Yeah.
together, like amazed in AI, and sad that it took so much of our jobs. But it's very fun. I think it's very useful, and I like what you kind of said that it's a good starting point, right? Because I think that's what I've noticed a lot is is that a lot of merchants they have an idea but they're just not really confident with where to start with A/B testing. And I think that's why what holds a lot of them back from CRO
Mm.
is like it just the results almost can kind of seem faster if they just turn on another campaign versus diving into the world of CRO, which can be really complicated. Unless you hire an expert like yourself, but as you're starting to figure out if you're even ready for an agency, it can just be really overwhelming. So AI, I think, is a good tool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of agencies that offer a free audit as the starting place, which is cool. But I mean, you can do that yourself now, essentially. Like if you're depending on which e-commerce platform you're on and the tools you have, you can pretty much just plug all of your data in and ask an AI agent to tell you where the problems are, and that gives you 90% of the audit anyway.
Yeah. It gets you most of the way there at least.
Mm.
Um, okay, so my next question, at the moment we're recording this is like 10 days away from Black Friday. So thank you for taking some time in like the busy season. But we're about to approach this, like we are in the midst of the busiest season for e-commerce merchants. And I would love to know what you and your agency, how you guys approach like testing during these busy seasonal times versus slower times. Do you change things? Does it matter for the brand? Like, do you turn all your tests off? Like, what's a good approach? How do you guys approach it um, when things
Yep.
are busy?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think a lot of brands shy away from testing during this time because they know that if things go wrong, then it can be a huge like detractor from their year's profit. But for us, we work with a range of businesses. Some of them love testing this time of year, some of them just completely locked down. Um, and it depends on your propensity for risk, one,
Mhm.
how long you've been working with an agency and whether you know that they're going to mess things up and like what your traffic is. So we have
Yeah.
one brand that does, I think they do about 30 million a year, and they tend to slow down in testing at this time of year because they do see a really big spike, and they've been testing for a while, so they're not looking for really big changes. But we work with another handful of brands that don't have a lot of traffic, and this is like the best time of the year to get through because as traffic increases, your testing velocity can too, because the tests reach significance a lot quicker. So if
Mhm.
you're chugging along with your 50,000 sessions a month and you're getting through a few tests a month, and it's like this is good. But then you hit the November spree, no, November, December, and it's like your traffic doubles or triples. Like, great, well, now we can test twice as many things. So um, the risk is that things can fall over, but that's all like a process question. So as long as your tests are going through and like being checked and there's lots of QA going
Mhm.
on and you're pretty confident that you're not like changing the whole engine that could break and cost you sales, then I don't think there's a lot of risk to it personally. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense is that if you or you have an agency, like someone can keep an eye on those tests. I think like probably the risk comes in when you turn a test on and then you kind of shift focus to like all the other 7 million things you're doing this time of year. But if you can have someone who can kind of consistently check in that like nothing breaks overnight, which is key. When you have a lot of traffic, that makes a ton of sense. Because I do
Yeah. And
what I think is interesting is like, does that spike in traffic like would it throw off a test? Like, do you see that like someone's running a test during a promotion? So like that data has to have kind of an asterisk next to it because you're like, well, this was during a promotion period, but we could still use some. Like, how do you approach, those results?
Yeah, it does. It does a little bit. You can't expect the results to be, well, it's more about the extrapolation of the data. So if you're like, whoa,
Mhm.
look at that test, it did great. We're going to make $100,000 more a month because of this one test. And then your traffic dries up the next month. It's like, well, you have to dial things back. But usually the intent of traffic doesn't change a whole lot in the
Mhm.
seasonal periods. People may be a bit more willing to purchase, but yeah, you can usually use the results pretty accurately across the rest of the year. But I will say it is a really good time of the year to test in preparation for future seasons because you don't really
Mhm.
get a chance to test your sales mechanisms unless you run frequent sales. But there's this one time of the year, if you want to do something next year, if you want to try a timer, if you want to try like scarcity
Yeah.
mechanisms, if you want to try different landing pages, like you only really get one shot a year to do that. So you can run a few of them. You can run them as an A/B test or a like multivariate test. And then next year, you're not guessing when it comes to sale time. You know what works.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point of taking advantage. Or maybe it doesn't even have to happen like during Black Friday, but like if you take advantage of like your summer sale or something like that,
Yeah.
like you look at your calendar, which I mean, like the beginning of the year, I think is probably the best time to think about that is like plan out when you want to run these A/B tests so you know when your next promotion period comes around.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay. So I have one last big question and then I'll wrap up and you can share where everyone can follow you. But I have seen you talk about this concept of an AA test. And I've never seen anyone talk about that before. So I kind of wanted to just get like, can you walk me through what that means and why it's so important?
Yeah, so AA tests are probably not something that anyone outside of CRO would understand or care about because all they care about is like winning. Um, but we do them pretty frequently because the concept is that you set up a test where the control and the thing you're testing are exactly the same. So you don't make a change and you just pop it into your split testing software. So it could be your homepage. You just put two versions of your homepage, they're exactly the same into the testing software. You let it run for a month and then you look at the results. So theoretically, you should see zero change between the performance. But what happens is that you'll see like plus or minus whatever the number is. Sometimes it's like quite big if you don't have a lot of traffic. Sometimes it's a bit smaller. And the whole concept behind this is that if you do run a test where you have changed something and you're looking at the results and you're thinking like, man, that 5% gain is great. That's really going to help me. But you run your AA test and you see that the variance between nothing and nothing is like 7%. You know that you can
Yeah.
have up to 7% difference just by changing nothing. And that doesn't mean your store's got 7% bigger. That just means the test is 7% wrong. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like a mental check as you're going through and doing these experiments. Because what happens for a lot of stores when they get into A/B testing, they don't let their experiments run for long enough, or they think that everything's going to be a winner. But the truth is, like, even our team we run like dozens of tests a week. We see 20%, 30% wins. Like sometimes it's much less than that. And we know what we're looking for. So when you're getting into it, you won't. So don't, it's just kind of like a check to make sure that you don't get excited about things that aren't actually wins.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, it's such a great concept. Like, it's so interesting. Like I said, when I saw that post, I was like, oh man, I got to talk to this guy because you it can very easily, you can get caught up in those big wins and like that data. And like, I think I'm a marketer, so I can say this, like, marketers are like, this is great. We saw this huge rush. Turn off the test. Like, this is our winner without kind of going back and being like, no, 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 let's gut check ourselves a little bit and let's make sure that like this is true. Because if we're going to make decisions based on those data, you want to make sure it's good data.
Yeah, and everyone's in it to win it as well. So
Of course.
you'll watch the experiment. This happens happens a lot to us, or it happened a lot to us when we were kind of starting out. where you see a test go up and you're like, well, it's up. I'm just gonna, if it goes back down, that probably doesn't mean that it's actually going back down because it's gone up. So you really want to see your tests win.
Hmm.
But after a while, if you're running experiments, you're like, oh man, every second test is winning. How come my revenue isn't going up? That's when
Yes.
you kind of start to question the validity of what the tests are. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's not something beginners, AA tests are not something beginners really need to worry about. But I think once you've been running a program for a few months, it's a good thing to throw in there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very smart. Um, okay, well, I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you chatting with me. So before we sign off, can you let people know if they want to work with you and Clean Commit, where they can find you, how they can use your services, and yeah, where to follow you?
Yep, sure. So firstly, thanks for letting me talk at you for half an hour. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone's listening and you want to check us out, just head over to cleancommit.io. That's the best way to get in contact. We do have a promotion running where if you are running a store and you have over 50,000 sessions a month, then we'll do a couple of experiments for free for you just to kind of prove that CRO works because it does work if you do it right. And if you want to follow me, I publish a ton of stuff on LinkedIn. So I'm doing some cool analysis at the moment on ASOS, and that'll be available in the coming weeks. And I've got a YouTube channel as well. It's a little bit thin at the moment, but is building momentum nicely.
Awesome. Well, we will link to everything. And like I said, highly recommend following Tim on LinkedIn. He does these really great deep dives. They're very interesting if you're starting to get into A/B testing and CRO. So thank you again for joining me. This was really fun. And yeah, as I said, check below. I'll include all the links. And if you need anything, you can find me at getshogun.com. And Tim, thank you again for joining us.
And there you have it, our first episode of the CRO Expert Series. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. If you want to know more about Tim or how he works with brands, you can find him at cleancommit.io. You can also find him on LinkedIn, where he is often sharing tips and tricks for CRO and A/B testing. He's a great follow. I've linked everything below. And of course, you can find us at getshogun.com. We have an A/B testing app in the Shopify App Store that you can get started on for free to start implementing some of these tips. And if you learned anything new or you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to know if you could leave a comment. Let me know what you took away from here. And you can subscribe because we will be interviewing lots more CRO experts over the next few weeks.